G'day, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and today, guys, we had a bit of a different episode. Now, what we recorded just last night, funnily enough, Big Jimmy and I, we jumped on for a rapid-fire Q&A session talking all things School of Property. Now, were all the questions about School of Property? No. In total, we answered about 40 or 50 odd questions from 100 questions, 100 plus questions that were sent through. But essentially what we did, guys, we whacked a timer on and we banged out as many questions as possible. And in total, this thing went from memory over an hour and a half worth of Q&A questions as well. So a lot of burning questions sent in. We had the chat bot open. We're smashing out a lot of things with a lot of people live on air as well, tuning into this thing. So strap yourself in, guys. A nice, big, long Q&A episode, about an hour longer than these things generally run for. The people loved it. They're on the Q&A. I hope you love it. If you take some great value, make sure, as always, you send it on to anyone else you think could also, take some great value out of this episode. If you aren't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the episodes, and leave us a 5-star review if you haven't done so yet. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to let Big Jimmy and I take this thing off and go through some rapid fire Q&A. I hope you love it. All right, Jimmy, you're up first, mate. We're going to smack these questions almost one for one, but they're a bit all over the shop here.
Yeah.
If you have no capital or equity left, however, you know that you can service, what creative options are available to continue moving forward?
Well,
so you have no capital or equity left, but you know you can service.
Question.
How do you keep moving forward? Just to detail as well, guys, this is questions. This is Q&A for both, obviously, School of Property questions mixed in here, but then across the board, we've got questions that you guys would normally send in for the Scouting Australia podcast as well. So there's a bit on both here that are going to be within this podcast. Within this recording. So get amongst it, guys. Let's jump in. Jimmy, what do you reckon?
Well, the big one, Sammy, that jumps out at my mind, because a lot of people who it's really difficult to save a certain amount of money. I mean, if you don't have a big capital to get started, as we know, capital is really important, cash or equity. And if you don't have those two things, but you got good income, well, what are you going to do? Well, you need to get creative. And I think what jumps out at me straight away is a term called other people's money. And either getting the ability to maybe borrow money off your family or your parents or something to give you a leg up to get started. That jumps out as probably the big one. Now, for a lot of people, that's not going to be possible. So it might be a joint venture setup where you're the serviceability partner, and you're going to do all the legwork, right? Whereas someone's got the capital, so they're the money partner. So you got sweat equity, you got money partner together. Even though we don't always advise clients to go together in a property, because it does get a bit complicated. But put it this way, if that's your only option and you're not going to be in the market, well, you might as well jump in. So find someone who's got the cash. You've got the know-how. You've been listening to the good old School of Property from this big nog. And then you can actually get a deal. So they are the two big ones. The other one, which we haven't really spoken a lot about, is probably options. Like if you can get option on a property and try and buy yourself a little bit of time for some capital down the line.
Very, very hard strategy in the current market, Jimmy. Man, I think
if you're disregarding the skill level of these people, the good people of our attendees, is that what you're saying?
Have you ever tried to option properties, Jimmy?
Nah.
I have. All right, in a dead focus with this stuff as well. I think the idea of JVing or looking down that, mate, are you on a wine already?
Mate, it's water. Something you don't know about.
There's a bit of color in that thing.
You've been too busy drinking sakis in Japan.
But the one thing, with option, guys, that wouldn't be my first port of call. It is good to bring it up, and I think in a couple of years, the opportunity might come back up for that. But in the current market, things like joint ventures, actually in School of Property, we have a section with my account that we run through how you can do that from a structuring perspective and the different sort of avenues or the way that you could build that out. So if you've got serviceability, but you're out of capital, you're out of equity, there's no real options there. It could be, so a lot of people look at doing this potentially with family or friends or a partner or something like that. And if you do it strategically through a structure, it can allow you to still do it, and you're both safe, but you're both still doing it with each respective sort of piece. But it's very important to get the correct advice around that before you go and pull the trigger on anything. If you are joint venturing with someone else as well. But Jimmy, mate, you didn't do too bad on that. You did all right. You must have read back over these questions.
I actually just took one for you, Sammy. People were saying they can't get on the chat, so maybe it's on your settings there.
I think the chat was disabled. You can punch things into the
Q&A.
Oh, Anon's back. Quit waffling, Jimmy.
You didn't want the hate mail. Is that why you turned the chat off? Turn off all comments.
Guys, you can send things in. There's a Q&A. That's like a chat box for the Q&A for any questions. But in terms of an actual chat box, I think backwards and forwards, I believe that has been disabled.
Okay, no worries.
I won't make a comment on that. Jimmy, you're up, mate.
All right, next question. So this is from Matt K. I work in project management and I'm hyper organized, but with the folio, I feel like I'm constantly waiting for everyone around me. I'm waiting for the broker, the accountant, waiting for the property manager, waiting for quotes, and the list goes on. Obviously, he's also waiting for the equity to grow. And there's largely no way I can accelerate this, he says. Obviously, no one cares about my portfolio as much as I do, but I'm not a big enough fish to be on the top of anyone's priority list. So when does the pace really start to pick up, Sammy? At which point do you get the feeling that things are snowballing and there's always something going on that you can work on? He says, I want to get to the point where my own energy is contributing to the portfolio's success and I'm not stuck constantly sitting on my hands. So what advice would you have for Maddie?
Look, it's one of those things. Property isn't an overnight success. It's a lot of the time, it's not something that you can absolutely smash out of the park straight away. It does take time. It does take time to snowball. So if I look at my early years, especially my first kind of like 5, 6, 7 years, they were quite slow, quite laborious. I also didn't have as much, knowledge. There isn't as much knowledge back then as there is out there right now, and people, able to help others scale their portfolios and stuff. So being able to do 1-2 properties a year these days is very achievable. Back then it was a lot harder, and I think, like, I know Matt actually quite well, and if you're still pulling a trigger on 1-2 deals a year, I still think that's quite decent. In terms of it snowballing and really starting to pick up, it really comes down to the portfolio and its performance. Obviously I know what you've got in the portfolio as well. It is picking up good pace. It is taking off. But sometimes what happens is the laborious part is the early part until you can sell and start to consolidate some debt. And when you kind of go through that process and then you can kind of reset the board and then go harder again that second time around, a lot of the time that's the real trigger point of the portfolio being able to explode. There's a few scenarios in School of Property we've run through and actually done the modeling around, well, what happens if you sell this and you could roll into this option or these different strategies. This is where it can really go to a different level, but sometimes it might take you going through a full cycle, a full growth cycle of that property, which might be 3, 4, 5 years until you can sell down. But once you can sell down, that's when the game can really change. And that's what I'd just be mindful of, man. Like, be patient when you've got a growth property that's performing really, really well. Be patient with it around that side of things. Let it get to its peak, and then obviously move forward from that end as well. Until you start to really pick it up and the portfolio goes crazy from that. I understand what you're saying about not feeling like you're a big enough fish. One of the things I'd be wary of is working with someone that's probably too big for you. If they are, like, there's a number of accountants out there, brokers and whatnot, that they are, you might get palmed off to some lesser people in their business as well. I'd probably be a little bit wary of that, unless they're very big players, unless they really understand what they're doing. If they really understand what they're doing, that might just be a part of the process. As long as it's moving through and you are still achieving your goals, sometimes working with the potentially less people in that business, but they can still execute for you at the right level, still might be the right person to work with. And then as you get through, you might become that big enough fish that you'll be working with them personally. But this is where I think it really drills down to, does that person understand, and are they still helping you towards your goals? Because, like, I revert back to the fact that property isn't an overnight success. And if it's just taking time because it needs to take time because it's building a portfolio, it is what it is. It's par for the core, and you got to take your time with that sometimes as well. Jimmy, anything you want to throw in on that with 11 seconds to play?
Jesus, I just think you just got to be patient. It is frustrating. I'm probably very impatient, not as impatient as you. You're the worst.
You're heaps worse.
But
everyone complains about
you.
Everyone.
You are so full of shit. Anyway, I would say there's a reason why
when Jackie was on the potty, who did she named and shamed you?
There's a reason why go on. Not everyone achieves all of this in property, and it's not meant to be easy. And I think once you get your head around the fact that these challenges are deliberately put in your way to see whether or not it's a good idea or you really want it, So think about anytime you're dealing with these people and you're pushing to get your broker, or like I've always felt that I've always been pushing the property manager, the broker, your accountant. Like you just have to be on the game. Yeah, the buyer's agent. You always have to be on these people. And I think he hit it on the head when he said, no one is looking after this, or no one has as vested interest as you. So once you make peace with the fact that there's a lot of pains in the ass to get this done, then you make peace with that. And then you realize, okay, what can I do? Because otherwise you're just going to bitch and moan about it. And I've been there, doesn't help you. So just get onto it. What can you do? Who can I call? Don't be a dick. Obviously be easy to deal with, but be on them. So if they know you're on it, if they know that you're switched on, then they're going to know, well, Sammy's going to be hitting me up. And one good thing I often used to do was always say, I haven't heard back from you. I'll try you again tomorrow to see if I can get through. And if they know you're going to call them back tomorrow, they'll generally reply back. Do you find that? I don't know if you find that.
I think one of the things you said there, Jimmy, man, was don't be a dick. And Matt, like I know him well. He's not a dick, but I think it's a great point for everyone listening here as well. It's all well and good to follow up and to all the rest of it. Following up is fine. Being a dick about it obviously isn't fine. So because it's just going to put people, you're just going to get on someone's bad side. And we've had that happen plenty of times before, where someone wants to be super, super pushy, but you're trying to do the right job for them. Just realize that other people, plenty of other people, especially the good people, are like that as well. Sometimes you need to be patient. But again, even in that setting as well, if you're feeling like you're on the outer and someone isn't really taking care of you, not so much that you're not a big enough fish, but they're not actually looking after you, it could still be worth, looking elsewhere as well on that. But Jimmy made a couple of great points on that.
And last one, if you're not getting the advice you want, like sometimes you're getting bad advice. I mean, sometimes that's just the way it is. And I know we've been in the situation where you've got rid of a property manager because they're not delivering on what you want, and you're professional about it. Just move on to the next one. Just keep moving, keep your eyes on what you're trying to achieve. So I hope that's helpful. Jimmy, next question from Ryan. Sammy boy, do you have a cutoff point where you'll stop investing into a market in regard to growth? E.g., let's say all micro data, such as days on market, stock on market, vendor discounting, vacancy rates, are all lining up, but the market has run 60% in the last 3 to 4 years. When do you stop investing there? So there you go. Shout out.
You want to finish the last line?
Well,
mate?
thanks. Okay, thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. Love your content. And you're one of the only BAs I respect and will take some advice from. Shout out to the Silver Dog also. Good on you, Ryan. All right, what do you got for Ryan?
Mate, you're a legend. Look, yes, there are times, just to get market around 60% the last 3 to 4 years. When do you stop investing there? Okay, so it is always specific to the location and the region. So when we do early studies on this, right, and when we're really assessing a market when we're first entering, or if we're entering and the market has already started a growth cycle, what we like to really understand is like, where did it come from, and how far do we think it's going to grow? That then paints a picture as to how far into a cycle that we will buy. Because if we believe a market's going to do 120 to 150% growth because of how low it started, how affordable it is, how big the drivers are there, where the incomes are at, where the rents are at, where all these other things have combined to show that it's going to have a massive cycle, a super boom cycle, as a lot of people love to joke around when they're referencing us and that potty, then we might buy further than 60% into a cycle. We won't do it very often, and we have to be extremely sure. But there are times where I've seen markets and been extremely bullish that it is going to continue its run, and we do still buy there. Or it might be for a specific purpose. Maybe we keep doing, renovations or something, some sort of value adds in those areas as well. But it's always very, very specific on that area, on that region, and understanding fundamentally how much growth it has in the tank and how far it can grow. And a lot of the time that'll come down all those indicators I mentioned before with all the indicators I mentioned a second ago as well really come into play for that. But if the market does have a huge room for growth, then sometimes we will still keep buying in at that point, especially if we've been, you say 3 to 4 years there and it's done 60%. Most of our markets we bought in 3 to 4 years ago have more than doubled. So we bought in a market and it's done 60%, but we believe the long-term prospects of it is 120 to 150. If we've been buying there for 3 to 4 years, our relationships are undoubtedly ridiculously strong, which means we get access to really, really good deals. So even though the market's done 60%, we might be buying in at 45 to 50% of that growth run because of the discount of how much we're able to buy it for below market. So something to really kind of consider there and kind of factor into the equation. It's always case by case though.
Because I remember you saying previously that you stopped buying in a particular market where it had a bit more juice. So, I mean, these things happen, right, in the past. So you don't want to leave a market untapped where you can get that a bit of extra juice. You're trying to find a different market. So
100%.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, it was out in man, I remember it clearly. It was out in Ipswich, and it did 10%. I'm out, and it did about 80%, 80, 90%. It was in a 2-year window, 18-month, 2-year window. And it did a massive run of growth. And I've done it before. I did it in Sydney in 2014. The market had done 20%. I go, no, that's it. Since 2013, the market where I bought those deals has done over 150% growth. So, you know, it's very important to understand how much growth the market's got in the tank to be able to make that decision.
And is that just an expertise from your own research? Like, so the average retail person and people listening to this are probably asking themselves, well, how will I know that? How will I know if there is that level? Like
all those indicators that I spoke about before. Look, I probably won't go any deeper into it than what I did list before as well, because that's all sort of like, you know, IP that we use when we're selecting areas and what are we really going into criteria around. But Big Lukey and I, you guys probably saw the post a week or two ago that I put up. Big Lukey and I did two podcasts that are actually in School of Property that are specifically around this, around how we select areas and even in terms of like how we know, you know, how we pick how much growth an area has left in the tank as well. So if you want a bit more of a deep dive, you know, that's where we really go deep around that as well. That's just Lukey and I, just the big guns on that one.
Okay.
Let's keep moving.
Just quickly,
Jimmy.
Just for some of the people who are writing in the Q&A, some of the questions are great, and if we don't get to them, we're going to add them to our list and continue to, because everyone's writing in so many great questions. We've got such a big list. So I don't know, are you going to jump into some of those, or should we just add them to our other list if we...
I think, guys, what we'll do, unless there's any in particular you want to earmark, Jimmy, guys, we do have, it's about 100 questions that have already been sent in. We've tried to whittle it down to 50. I've been trying about 8, but that's because he's a dog. Guys, we will get through as many of these as we can, but with the questions you're writing in, especially there's a couple of School of Property specific students there as well. What we're going to do is want to reiterate, I know I spoke about this earlier, guys. I'm going to do a live webinar in a couple of weeks that will be specifically for School of Property students. And the reason for it is some of the questions that are within it and the questions that got sent in, they are off the back of some of the modules that are in the course. So the answers that are very specific within that to essentially very relatable to what we did within School of Property as well. So make sure, guys, if you want any of that stuff, you jump in there and register as well.
All right, buddy. It's back to you. Yeah, it's
let's go. Oh, here we go. We got a big Carl here, big Carl W. How many deals do I need to do with APS for the SOP? That's a School of Property discount. Asking for someone that missed the December 31 deadline. Carl, well, stay tuned in to the end of this episode, my friend.
I was going to say, the good people that have joined the webinar, taken out some time on their Monday. Sammy, surely you're going to give the good people a bit of a deal, a bit of a bargain.
Other than looking at your mug on a Monday night. Stay to the end, big Carl. I love you, mate.
All right,
Jimmy,
let's go. Next question from Sammy O. A different Sammy. G'day, Bulldog. He's called you the Bulldog and the Silver Shark. Well, there we go. Sammy boy, mate, at what stage of your portfolio did you stop contributing additional cash to your portfolio?
Good question.
And when did it reach a point where it was funding itself? For your typical clients that want to accumulate 1 to 2 properties a year, at what point can they just run on the equity and not contribute any additional cash? Would you have a rule of thumb for property numbers, time frame, or equity position that you can see clients reach this point? Love your work, fellas. Thanks, Sammy. Great question.
Great question. Look, it is typically, it's always case by case, right? So it depends what you're starting with, what you're buying, how much equity growth it's having, and yeah, really the performance of those initial early properties. So we have a lot of clients that, yeah, they might need to, obviously the first property at least, but maybe 1, 2, sometimes depending how hard they're wanting to go, maybe the first three deposits, you know, that they might chip in, and then that might fund the entire run for the rest of their portfolio. It really depends on your goals as well, mate. I know you're saying like 1 to 2 properties a year. If you're talking 1 to 2 properties a year, you're probably going to at least be chipping in man, realistically, probably for the first at least 3 years, if not maybe 4 years, if you want to keep that momentum building. Man, once you've gotten it to that point, like if we talk, let's say we're 4 years in and we're buying 1.5 a year, that's 1 to 2 deals a year. You're going to be 6 properties in 4 years. That is what, more than likely that is going to be self-fulfilling itself, and that equity base is going to keep growing and keep building from there as well. So I'd be very confident, probably looking at 3 to 4 years before it starts becoming fully self-sufficient from a capital growth perspective and an equity perspective. The one thing I would always say, and I know you kind of, I think you asked a little bit around mine as well. Yeah, for me, myself, man, I was probably realistically still contributing cash 7 or 8 years in. And then I had the choice where I no longer needed to contribute cash. So, and that's what you'll get to. You might be able to do it, quite a bit faster. And buying in the correct markets, getting the right growth, buying at the right price, all the rest of it as well. You might be able to do it a lot quicker than I did back then. I was in a very low income. Growth rates were a lot slower. I wasn't getting as big discounts as I obviously get these days as well. So it was a slower turnaround process. It was a slower journey back then too. So I think that's really, really important to note. And man, it always depends on the journey. But with what you're looking to do, I'd say probably, I'd be looking at minimum 2 to 3 years of that solid accumulation every year. If you're wanting to buy at those numbers. But obviously buying the right property, right location, you're still able to strip equity. And I think one final important note that I'll make on this is you'll still be able to strip equity. Let's say you were doing deals with us as well. The first deal or the first 2 deals you do with us, you're going to be able to pull equity to buy the second or the third or whatever. But if we're talking about being fully self-sufficient, that's what takes a couple of years, because it takes it to start snowballing. And then you buy property number 5 or 6, and you might be harvesting 1 or 4 or 3 or whatever. You're going back through and valuing them all at once to be fully self-sufficient. But to be, to be going from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and so on, you might still be chipping in maybe 10, 20 grand per property to keep that momentum building. You're purely waiting on purely equity alone. That's what might take a bit longer, to really kind of keep building it from there. So
can I just add something?
Yes, mate.
Yeah, that was good, Sammy. Can I just add something for on top of that? Obviously, and forgive me if you already said this, but clearly if we're borrowing all of the money, we're stripping out equity and we're borrowing again, the big elephant in the room is your serviceability. So do you have to put in cash is the question. And so what I've noticed is some people will deliberately not put in their cash by saying, I'm going to wait until I get the equity.
Yeah.
But if they're not understanding the velocity of money, a term I coined a few years ago.
Did you? You silver thief.
But if you're not actually, if you're putting that money, like what is that money doing? So if your money is better used buying or putting it as a deposit to get into a deal faster, and the velocity of that money is actually going to give you a better outcome, that is the right decision. So from my gut feel, I know that I've been able to use equity for quite a few properties, and some of those I deliberately didn't just because I wanted to do it faster. I had the cash there. What is your cash doing for you in terms of the return? So I just said, you know what, I'm going to use that as a deposit. I'll recycle it anyway, but I'd rather through the velocity of money trying to get into the market faster, you put in your cash.
Yeah.
So the fastest way is your own cash because your serviceability is going to be better. 100%. The slowest way is all equity. The medium term is probably cash and equity. And then, so I think you said it, your goals. If you want to go hard, the more money you're putting in, the faster you're going to go.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. Couldn't agree more. Guys, I'm going to smash out a couple of questions that are on the side that I was just reading then that I think we can knock out very quickly. And Anon is on fire. He's got 15 questions in there. Get a link to the podcast Sam just mentioned. Guys, those macro and micro economic podcasts with Big Lukey Chewson, the fan favorite above all others on the Scouting Australia podcast show, are only in the School of Property course. The macro and micro driving factors in the property market, they are only in the School of Property course. Big Davey H, is it okay to use PPOR to get started? My serviceability is dramatically affected to kick off my first deal. Is it okay to attach PPOR to get started? I'm guessing you mean to like release equity, or if you're talking about actually using cross-collateralizing them. What's that, Jimmy?
I think he's using basically to pull out some equity from his primary place of residence. Don't you reckon?
If it's equity, yeah, I think it is. If it's equity, then yeah, 100%. Like that's the way most people start. They start off using equity in their primary residence. They might have cash deposit, or majority of people will start with, at least 50% of people will start with that as well. Beautiful.
Okay.
Jimmy, I'm up next.
I think anonymous is actually Lukey on the chat. I reckon.
You reckon it
I
is?
got a feeling it's big Lukey Cheeson on the chat.
If you
I'm
give
just
himself
throwing
more of
it
a
out
pump
there.
up, he'd probably be posting some trophies just for some inside knowledge, guys. Big
I
Lukey,
reckon
when he
it's
does
him.
anything, he wants a trophy for everything that he does. He's like, I've got to get a trophy. I should be rewarded for this thing.
Actually, Dave H has just written in about his primary place of residence as security.
Look, mate, if it is your only option, if it is the only option, mate, I'm always one. I used to take money from wherever I could get. If it is the only option, then yes, I still believe it's worthwhile. You know, as long as the property is in the correct location, purchased at the correct price, and it is going to outweigh, you know, the potential risks sort of associated with that. But if it is the only option, mate, I definitely still go down that avenue and still do it, mate. It's the same as people going out and they get a guarantor on the parent's home. It's not ideal. It's not really what you would want. But if you listen, remember big Jason Titus's episode that we did about 6 months ago or whatever it was. If he hadn't done that, he wouldn't have got started and he wouldn't be sitting on a 4-property portfolio in 12 to 18 months or whatever it was. So if it's what you need to do, mate, I would do it. Jimmy?
No, I think that's a very good point. I mean,
Right,
what's the opportunity cost? He's doing nothing.
100%.
So.
Guys, on the side with your big questions, we don't have time to whack through the real big ones that have been written through now. We will save those for a rainy day. Jimmy, hey guys, I'm currently maxed out with lending. I think my portfolio consists of suboptimal investment properties. I feel like I need to pivot, in brackets, sell off and start again. Do you think I should start selling immediately or perhaps sell over the next 12 to 24 month window ahead when interest rate reductions commence and potentially get a bit more in each sale? In brackets, he is singing super boom, super boom, super boom. Jimmy?
Oh, Sammy, this is a challenging question because you're trying to tell some guy to sell his hard-earned properties that he's worked hard on. I think you got to weigh it up the opportunity cost. I mean, being more of not a risk taker, but one who wants to make things happen. If a property is underperforming, you got to ask yourself, well, what is going to change? Like play it out. So play out the scenario. Is this going to change in 12 months' time? If the answer is no, then as hard as it is to let that go and you feel like it might have failed or whatever, you got to change the conversation and ask yourself, what could I be doing with this capital? So play out the two scenarios. Even if you get a piece of paper, put a line in the middle, scenario A, scenario B, play it out, write it out. And if it is a dud investment, why is that property going to change in 12 months' time? That's what I'd be saying.
I love it. I love it. It's good, Jimmy. It's good. One of the biggest things I would weigh in there. By the way, guys, I was just laughing because Lukey's blowing up my phone going, what a stitch up. You're a dog.
Is it him? Is it him?
No, it's not him. It's not him. He's going, what a stitch up. Look, the biggest thing I would probably say here, Big Dougie, I agree with Jimmy's points there. You know, if you could do better elsewhere, then it's always opportunity cost, velocity of money. Obviously, there's selling costs to get out, there's buying costs to get in. But the biggest thing that, mate, you wrote in your very first sentence was portfolio consists of suboptimal investment properties. Now, if they're not performing and you don't believe that they're going to perform in the next few years, one of the biggest things, mate, like this is the way I'd look at it. If it's not going to perform in the next few years and you could pull your money out and put it somewhere else, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. You could significantly build yourself a significant portfolio as opposed to sitting on the sidelines with a suboptimal portfolio, as in your words. I've seen people do that before. They only ever end up with regret. So the biggest way and the cleanest way to look at this thing is assess those properties, maybe do some good market research on where they are. Do you think they are actually going to benefit from the super boom in the next 12 to 24 months? If yes, mate, it's probably worth holding on, sitting there, letting the portfolio do its thing. If the answer is a no, you know, could you potentially look at clipping one of them or two of them, or I don't know how many you've got in a specific region, you know, to be able to deploy those funds elsewhere to build your portfolio, you know, a lot better somewhere else.
Because can I also say, Sammy, with that, if you're waiting for a really shit investment or a suboptimal investment to get better, what is actually happening to the really good investments? What are they going to be doing?
100%.
So that's the kind of measure you got to do. And I know, like, complete empathy for people, because I've had crappy properties that haven't done anything. So I get it. And I know how painful it is, but you need to get the right advice and you need to ask an expert. And it's throwing it back to you, Sammy boy. So when clients come on board and they do a strategy session, do you look at their portfolio that they've already got? And then do you tell them, mate, I'd probably give this the flick, or you know what, I'd keep that. I reckon this is going to do well. Or like, at what point do you tell people not only what are they going to buy, but as part of a strategy session with APS, what do you tell them about what they've already got?
Yeah, 100%, man. So the first thing we always do, Luke and I are both exactly the same on this. We'll sit in and we'll assess their current position, right? So we'll assess what they've got in their portfolio now and what they are, what they're looking to do in their portfolio as well. So if their portfolio now is positioned and we think it's positioned well, we'll look and yes, you should sell this, or no, you should sell this, or whatever. We typically give the feedback on our opinion of their portfolio at the time. And if there's some people there that might have, a couple of properties that have done 150, 200% in the last 10 years in Sydney, but they're absolutely bleeding out of their eyeballs and they can't afford to hold this thing because they've stripped all the equity out, or maybe they've got 300 grand equity in there, but $1.5 million worth of debt or something on it. Like scenarios like that. And you look at it and you just explain the way that we look at it and what we would do in that scenario, and then where you could potentially position that money and that borrowing elsewhere to keep building the portfolio. So, to answer your question, mate, yes, we definitely go through that. We go through and we assess, the client's portfolio, give our feedback, and then give what we would do as a game plan moving forward as well.
Okay, brilliant. Well done.
Beautiful.
All right.
Mate, let's roll. What do we got? You're up next.
Back on to, is it Cassia? Is that Cassia? What did I say?
Cassia.
Cassia.
Nah,
Cassia.
Cassia.
I'm on 120K a year, Sammy boy.
Yes.
With 300 grand of savings. Gee, she's doing well. Would you be able to
something going on the side, I reckon?
I think she's got a bit of a side hustle.
Bit of a cheeky side hustle, I reckon.
Sammy's a subscriber. Would you be able? Mate. What? What are you talking about? Let me get the question out. I
apologize for the potty mouth on Gandalf over here.
Let me get the question out. Would you be able to give an example on how fast in number of properties where we are able to grow our portfolio, and when it's time to pause purchasing as lenders won't lend anymore as much, and what to do then?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I don't know, mate. You read it a bit.
It was a bit of a mouthful. So basically, they want an example of how fast they can actually achieve this to be able to grow their portfolio.
We're able to grow our portfolio, and when it's time,
before they get stopped, and then what to do then?
Lenders won't lend anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
So it always depends on outgoings, right? On living costs, because someone earning 120 grand a year who lives a very lavish lifestyle, they may have no serviceability, or someone who lives a very frugal lifestyle might be able to buy 3 times as much as that person that lives lavishly. 300 grand worth of savings is very, very strong. You can do a lot with the 300K savings. In terms of purchasing, look, the way I probably would do it initially is, just to kind of give a very basic example around this, I would probably start with 2 really good, solid bread and butter deals. Go out there, put them in the portfolio, make a discount on the way in, buy in the right markets. They're going to keep performing and give you that equity back. That's the most important thing with those first purchases. So you want to make sure you're doing that. And then it's, in my opinion, it's not so much around like, well, then the speed of maxing myself to the moon, to the roof of getting to 4 or 5 properties and then getting completely stuck. At that point, then I would reassess the serviceability and make a decision from there as to what I would do, continue buying. Would I start swapping to cash flow deals? Would I continue to pick up another couple of bread and butters? It would really depend. It's always case by case. Just going down the bread and butter route and being able to smack out, 4, 5, 6 deals quite quickly, with 300 grand worth of savings, it probably is possible at the lower end sort of price points. But is it the right avenue? Probably not to be able to keep building the portfolio to the size. But again, I don't really have the goals here as well and exactly what's being chased. But yeah, it kind of depends, guys. Like a lot of people are very fixated on trying to build a really big portfolio really quickly. Often the best thing to do is to build the foundations very strongly, in that initial probably 12 months, especially with the amount of savings that's sitting there as well. Build the foundations really strongly in those first 12 months, and then make a decision from there from a serviceability perspective. Okay, well, how do we now keep growing, keep building forward from there as well? That's
a really good point. And for everyone on this webinar, we can often get seduced into the bigger numbers of what we want to achieve and 5 or 10 properties and all that. And we've all been there. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I think once you just need to focus on obviously the first deal, and that first deal has to link into the next 2 or 3. So whether you're starting with no properties or you've got a few, don't get too far down the line. Yes, you want to have a big view of the macro perspective, and it needs to fit in, and we're reverse engineering it. But don't you find sometimes the next best deal that you can do right now, that's going to give you the flow and effect to what can happen potentially next. Like you want to plan as best as you can, but don't get too seduced in, I need to get 10 properties tomorrow. And you're jumping the gun a bit too far. I find people jump the gun a little bit. Let's bring it back a little bit. Let's bring it back. Think about what we want to do, but what do we need to do now? Because it's too big. Like, 10 properties or 200 grand passive and all that. Sometimes it's big for people they get the analysis paralysis and it just becomes too overwhelming. But what is the first deal I can do? I've got the money, I've got the income, need to get a pre-approval. What property is going to help me right now? Is it cash flow? Is it growth? And then move. And then let's reassess, because as soon as we've bought you a deal, we're going to look at where you're at. What should you be doing next? And then we go again. And then we go again. What do you think? I mean, I just think sometimes...
Man, I think it's a mix on the investor's goals, and I think it's a mix of the person. So sometimes a client will come through and I'll go, let's just start with a single deal because they need to get their heads around it, right? But if they've got like in that scenario, they've got $300,000 and they're wanting to go hard, man, I'm okay to get someone into 2 deals if I feel like they've got the like I guess the mental capacity to be able to handle it as well. And
but let me ask you, right? 300 grand. Someone, and I don't know their situation, but someone who saved 300 grand, they've been big savers. So they've been fearful of making a decision.
Yeah.
I mean, this is generalizing, right?
Yeah, go for it.
But they've been fearful of making a decision. So they've been just pooling the money. So
they've done extremely well in making money in something else.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Good point. First good point of the night. Well done, Sammy.
Thanks, mate. I'm still waiting for yours.
So I'm just thinking,
because in this scenario, she may have had a primary residence that she sold off, and then she's cleared $300,000 or something like that. And this is where it's sometimes a little hard to speculate on these sort of ideas. Yeah. This is where I think with ourselves, we will always make the decision based on the individual that's sitting in front of us or that we're having the chat with. Because if we think they've got the capacity to go out and go a bit harder from that perspective, we'll help assist and facilitate that as well. You're reading some questions there. But if we think that they're a bit, maybe a little bit more conservative and maybe just need to cut their teeth on a deal. We used to have it happen a lot of the time, Jimmy, you'll remember this, man. A lot of people came through and they wanted to start with cash flow deals, right? And they wanted us to go out there and find them a reno and granny deal or something. And they go and they want to kind of they want to go do a level 10 deal, right? Or a level 15 deal or something. They're a level 1 investor with a level 1 knowledge base. Or we might educate them a little bit in a strategy session, get them to a level 3 or 4, and maybe with the podcast, they get to a 6 or something. But even still, jumping into a level 15 deal as a level 6 investor, just for an example, it's too much. And some people, you can see they've got the characteristic traits that they can stumble their way through, especially because we're managing it and get through it. And there's other people that they can't. It's going to be too overwhelming for them. And they need to start on something easy, cut their teeth on something and just get through the first deal, which could be a really nice, good, solid bread and butter, get the feel of the process, get a nice valuation uplift, and then bang, let's pull out the equity. You've got enough left over. Let's go do the cash flow deal then. So again, it's always case by case. But Jimmy, mate, let's keep moving. Do we want to smack a couple of these questions on the side?
Well, if
I'm going to go in here. Davey H.
Not?
By the way, I'm the Mount Gambian bargain guy.
Wow.
It's not. His name's Al. All right, anonymous. Anon John here. Why are you so red, Sammy? Does Jimmy intimidate you? No, he just makes me very angry. So I get red and I want to slap him. No, it's called Gold Coast, bro. It's the sun. You must be in Mordor where the smog covers the sun. It's sun, bro.
Actually, this is a good one, Sammy. Just a bit of a change up from Zana, I believe. Zana.
Okay.
Or Zana. Hi guys, I've listened to all the podcasts. Currently doing a 2 into 4 lot subdivision for myself personally. Would love to start doing bigger lots and building houses, but just don't know how to go from small time to something bigger. What's your thoughts?
The game, Zana, is typically the same, right? So it's just bigger numbers. There is more involved in it. You have to start leading into commercial lending. But the numbers, it's essentially just a bigger numbers game. Would love to start doing bigger lots and building houses. We just don't know how to go from small time to something bigger. Easiest way on this is cut your teeth on the small stuff. Do a couple of them, get yourself very skilled on it, build a nice little war chest, and then step into the bigger ones. There literally isn't that much different. So because all the development pieces, it's almost always the same. You know, a single lot subdivision compared to, all right, maybe like a 1 into 2 compared to like a 1 into 4 and then a 1 into 10 or something like that. Yes, it's slightly bigger, But in essence, it's all very similar from that size as well. Like, yes, all right, it is different and it gets bigger, but especially if you're doing a couple of these and you cut your teeth on a couple of these and get them under your belt, you're definitely going to be able to step it up and go to that next level. The biggest thing I'd say is build yourself a little bit of a war chest. Always buffer in your buffers as much as possible. Keep yourself a little bit of fat there as well, and then yeah, cut your teeth on it when you're ready. Just take the next step.
Can I also say with developments,
yes.
and I don't proclaim to be doing developments of subdivisions and all that, but from what I've seen and from what I've seen from the results of deals that you've done for me, I'm just not sure that all developments are actually what they're cracked up to be, especially if you don't know your numbers, because of the time frame to execute them, and then at the end of the day, what are those actual numbers? Like, what are you ending up with? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And I don't know this particular example, but I would just be very skeptical, not judging it that just because it's a development that it's going to work and you're a big time developer, because the numbers don't care. The numbers will tell you.
The one thing I'll say, I agree with you, Jimmy, but also if Zana's found herself a little patch where it works and she can develop there and she can make good money, I know a lot of guys that have made good money out of it as well. And there's time, in a time like this, if you're buying in the right market that's growing as well, I personally prefer, and we've done a podcast on this recently around, should you be developing in this market? Can you make better gains elsewhere with a lot lower risk? My personal opinion is yes. But that's not, that wouldn't have been answering a question and helping her from that vein as well. So I understand completely where you're coming from with it. If she's found a little patch where she's making good money and she's doing well out of it, the one thing I would say, Zana, one of the biggest things I've ever seen is people have made money out of doing developments because the market did a run, not because of their ability or their skill as a developer. This gives people, I'm not saying this is you, but this gives people a false sense of ability with developing, and then they go and overshoot their next projects. And the market lifting 200 grand helped make them 100, 150, right? And that, if the market had stayed the same, maybe they wouldn't have even banked anything. So one of the things is just like, run it properly on that. I'm sure I'm sure you have if you're doing it from this sense as well. But just be wary of that. In recent years, I've seen a lot of people just do okay out of it because the market's uplifted as well. Just be very wary of that before you start going and doing the bigger stuff as well. Because as like I was saying, like from a numbers perspective, it's just bigger numbers a lot of the time. Like especially a 2 into 4, it's not a small. I'm guessing you've got 2 side by sides there. But when you're going like say 4 into 8 or maybe 2 into 8 or something like that, it's bigger numbers. But it's also bigger numbers when it goes the other way as well. So if the market goes backwards, you can lose a lot more money from that end as well. But let's move on from developing. One quick question I'll jump into that has been punched into the Q&A chat box as well, guys, is from Judith. Do you feel people who complete the School of Property will no longer require your services as a buyer's agent, as they will be equipped with the knowledge to find their own deals, i.e. off-market and under-market value? I did answer this last year when we did the podcast as well, because one of the things you brought up, Jimmy. Now, one of the biggest thing that I'll never cannibalize is APS, right? Is Australian Property Scout. I love that business. I love everyone that we've got in the team. I love what we do as an organization as well. That is the main thing that is the only thing that I don't give away in this. It is how to buy, and it is how to buy the way that we buy. Buying below market value, buying off market, and everything that's related to that. That is the only piece of the puzzle that I do not give away in this course. The idea of the course is to be able to educate you to build that knowledge base, to understand how to actually build a sizable portfolio. There are so few people that have ever actually built a really big portfolio starting from an average Australian income or less. And the idea of the course was really passing on as much of that knowledge that I built over that journey of building it on a less than average Australian income and building a portfolio a lot bigger than majority of people in this country, right? And that's the idea of it. So to answer your question, Judith, is no, you won't be able to do it or buy anywhere near as well as we do, just from completing the course. Obviously, what we do and the relationships that we build out there and the scale that we're able to buy at as well, it gives us an unmatched ability to purchase and create relationships the average person is not going to be able to create. So I hope that answers your question, Judith. Jimmy, let's jump into the rest of the list, mate. We're about 8 questions into about 50, mate.
We are. I might just jump over. There was a couple there for you, but clearly you're not on the game, so I'll take over. CJ, his question is, how do I go about getting multiple pre-approvals concurrently?
Yes.
He's interested in this as it appears to be a great accelerating strategy to acquire quicker. So
Beautiful.
what's your thoughts?
Mate, easy as. So I always get multiple pre-approvals at once. I'll never go to a singular pre-approval. All you do is you just say to your broker, let's run my serviceability. All right, I've got $1 million. Beautiful. Let's split that into 2 properties or 3 properties or whatever you want to do. You pretty much just tell them that I want to split that into multiple purchases, and I want 2 pre-approvals at once. If you've got a broker that says no, I'm not willing to do that, you need a new broker. That's the only way that I would see that hadn't been, offered to you before. But that's one of the biggest things. One of the biggest things that I've been doing now for almost 10 years. I think I started doing that when I was about 24 or 25. I started getting multiple pre-approvals at once. So you can definitely get multiple pre-approvals. You literally just need to ask the broker.
Okay.
All right.
Beautiful.
I'm up next from Big Michael J. Hey lads, love the show. Question: when you are purchasing properties, are you usually paying the stamp duty or adding it to the loan? Keep up the fire content. Cheers, lads.
The fire. Well, it really depends, Sammy. If you're starting with nothing, if you don't have any equity to draw from, and you're starting with your own cash, then clearly, generally with your first deal, all of those starting costs, so your deposit, your stamp duty, if you're using a buyer's agent, those fees are coming out of your own initial capital, which is your cash. But if you are theoretically recycling equity from a cracking deal that you did with a buyer's agent, and then you're with really nice hair, blue chip, then you are pulling out that equity, and that equity then forms part of your capital base. So from that equity would cover your stamp duty, your BA fee, your deposit, and so forth. So it really depends on what you're doing. Are you using equity to do it, or if you're using cash?
So let me just quickly jump on that as well, guys, because Michael's more asked about like adding it to the loan. We typically would never really recommend to add it to the loan. What Jimmy's saying there is you could equity release it from a previous deal, and with that equity release, let's say it was a $500,000 purchase, you might be buying it at a 12% deposit. That's 60 grand plus your stamp duties, legals, BA fees, all that sort of stuff. You can pay it out of the equity that's released, but not so much adding it to the loan. So it really depends. When you're starting out, you're normally paying it out of cash initially to get it going, but then you're going to release it out and then use it as recycled equity, as Jimmy has said there. And that essentially is comes from a loan piece there, but you're not adding it to the loan on the property that it is that you're purchasing.
Yeah, beautiful.
Good.
All right, Sammy
Perfect.
boy.
Next
question
up
for you.
Jimmy has paid someone to send this one in, I reckon. Surely. We're not in April yet. This can't be April Fool's. Jimmy, how can I look as good as Jimmy when I get to his age? In brackets, 3001.
How do you know how old I am? Well, one of us has to be the sharper of the two, and I'll leave that for our listeners to judge. But very nice of you, Jack. For 35, I think I'm doing okay, but I appreciate your comments.
For 35, you're a smash crab on the highway. You are.
Oh, I think you put Jack up to that, you arsehole.
Definitely.
All right, let's keep moving. This is a superannuation question, Sammy boy.
Here we go.
Is 95K in super enough to move into an SMSF, self-managed super fund, and purchase the property? Will it stack up with all the expenses at such a low amount? That's from Jace. Great question.
Jace, great question, mate. Also an APS client, champion. Look, guys, as always, we cannot give any sort of financial advice, and nothing that's said on this webinar, podcast, whatever it is financial advice at all. All I can do is give personal experience on things that I have done in the past. When I bought my first property in SMSF, I used $78,000. I only had about $100,000 in there. Yes, I went in a very low entry price. This was about 2 years ago. And yeah, look, it can be done. I was able to do it at that. Would you need maybe a little bit more to buy the same property now, or, even at the same price point, whatever? Yes, you might need a little bit more than that, but that's just me. No financial advice. I did it with $78,000. Hope it answers your question.
And did you have a 20% deposit, or what did you do?
Yeah, so
can you
within
disclose that?
SMSF, yeah, 20% deposit. So that deal was 260 grand.
And a lot of people are quite interested about SMSF. So from an interest rate perspective, is lending in SMSF typically a bit higher than lending outside of SMSF?
Yeah, there's been a few different products that have come out in the last call it 6 to 12 months. A lot of players have been getting back into the game. And when I say players, I'm talking banks, right? And so a lot of different banks have been getting back into the game. There is one particular lender at the moment that is actually lending to a 90% LVR, which is crazy. It's never been actually seen before. They came out with that about 3 or 4 months ago. So there's a few different sort of products starting to pick up from that perspective as well. But yes, you typically pay P&I in SMSF, and it is the rates are typically they're actually not that much higher, Jimmy, because it's a very I mean, it's they're typically non-recourse loans, right, as well, but you're putting up more capital for it. They got more blacklisted postcodes and whatnot. It's a bit of a different kettle of fish within it. You will typically pay a little bit more, but my SMSF rates aren't that much higher than my normal rates. So no, they're not too bad at all.
Okay, great. Well, that's
Beautiful.
good for people that are sitting around that price at 100, 150, looking at what Sammy said, peeling back the onions, there is some possibility for you to do a deal.
Yes.
Should you choose. Okay. What else we got, Sammy boy? That's a good one. When's the client meet and greet snow trip, Sammy? That's from Jack.
Mate, it's coming, Big Jacko, mate. We'll have to pencil it in soon. I reckon there's going to be will have to be a certain number of deals that you have to have done with APS, which you're probably already over, and then yeah, mate, we'll line it up. Send in the request for where you guys want to go. Yeah, good.
Who's Matt? Matt goes, Jimmy making only himself laugh with his jokes are a vibe. Thanks, mate. That's so nice. That's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. God,
all right,
Anon's
Sammy,
going nuts in here, buddy. Anon, mate, take it easy.
This
Actually,
is a question.
Hang on, this is Anon. Can I throw in Anon one? Hi, Jimmy. Anon here. Anon's on my side tonight. This must be a different Anon. Can you please tell the listeners where you got your hair products from? Is this boot polish?
Wow. That's
I'm going to take that.
It's from my barber in Elwood here in Victoria. It's a very, very, very nice guy from Mauritius. So I can't remember what it's called. He's from Mauritius. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Jimmy.
This question is for you, Sammy.
Yes.
And this is from Steph McMillan. With the cost of labor being so high at the moment for a tradies, what's the best strategy? Is there any merit in reno and flipping?
Mate, where is this question? I don't even know where. All right, go for it again. Sorry, go for it again.
With the cost of labor being so high at the moment, and I think this is for a tradies. What's the best strat?
For a tradie, what's the best strategy? And is there any merit in doing renos and flips?
Got it. Yeah. What do you think,
Stefan, big fella? For a tradie, I think the big thing with what you're saying there's two things, right? Because you're saying, like, with the cost of labor being so high at the moment for a tradie, what's the best strategy? Any merit in reno and flip? I think it depends, mate. Because if you're talking about yourself being the tradie going out there and doing the reno, then yeah, man, like at the moment there actually is pretty decent money in renos right now, because the cost of trades are so high that it's a massive gap right now between unrenovated and renovated product. So if you could renovate your product yourself or be able to do it for a cost-effective budget, yeah, man, there is decent money to be made out there. We have a couple of markets in particular that we actually execute this strategy on for clients, because there is such a big disparity between unrenovated and renovated product. The biggest issue with reno to flip is your margins at the moment are quite slim in terms of like being able to make discounts on the way in and then being able to buy them. And this is where you have to kind of be able to do the if you're doing the renovation yourself and you're in the right growth market that's still going to tick up, flips are one of those things where you want to be able to get a really good buy on the way in, to be able to make a bit of a margin in there, and then obviously be able to build the fat in from the reno side as well. It's there. It's just one of those things. You want the market to be able to keep growing for you to get you a bit of natural lift in there as well. I've never been the biggest fan of renos to flips, to be honest, unless the market's dead flat and you can get that real big fatty, juice in the middle. They're just typically, from my perspective, they're never quite big enough to be worthwhile, in my opinion.
Okay. Keeping going, Sammy. I got this other question from Johnson in the chat, which is a great question. He says the course teaches the sweet price point 250 to 650K. Do you see this creeping in the next few years where deals will be out of this price range? Or in your experience, there is always an affordable suburb that will have its day in the sun. In other words, is the FOMO I'm feeling justified? Or as you say, take our time, there is always fish in the sea. What a great question.
It is a great question. There are always opportunities out there in the market, guys. Always, without a doubt. The one thing that I will say, and I think we did a podcast on this at some point last year, Jimmy, or it was said in a podcast somewhere, the bottom end of the market in Australia is definitely moving. So the ability to buy sub $300,000 deals, it's almost gone, guys. And it's been there for quite a long time. Like in Brizzy, we were able to do it 3 years ago. In Perth, we were able to do it up until probably the start of last year. In Adelaide, you were able to do it up until the start of last year. Sub 300,000 in metros, gone.
Can we just clarify? We're talking houses, right?
Yeah.
Just for people thinking.
We've got another potty coming out soon on why you guys should not buy shit units sub $200,000, no matter how many times you see an ad on them on Facebook or on Instagram, wherever you see them. But talking houses, guys, always. The bottom of the market is starting to creep. And it doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities out there. There's always opportunities at different price points. But it's just something to be aware of, is that, the conversations of buying things in the twos. I honestly believe by the end of this year, for good suburbs and good areas, I think that's going to be at the door. I think it is going to be gone now. I don't think it's going to be there anymore. But it doesn't mean that there isn't still going to be really good opportunity out there in different markets. And maybe they're just in the 300,000s. And just because a market's gone from 250 to 300, or even if it's gone from the high twos to the mid threes or something like that, maybe it's seen 20 to 30% growth. Doesn't mean there isn't still opportunity there. It just means that it's, we're no longer in that price bracket anymore. And that is what it is, guys. It's okay, from that perspective. So, it's never, there is always places worth investing in, but it's just, from a price point perspective, the floor is shifting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic.
One quick note I'm going to make on that. There was a question asked before, sorry, I think it's Cassia was with the $300,000.
Yep.
We had a guest write in, a client write in, actually, Nay, who just made a comment here. We did it with 300K and APS bought us 5 properties in a 12-month window. So, examples there of where you can push it really, really hard. And obviously that's why we give the scenarios and the parameters around what is possible. And obviously these guys went pretty hard with it as well. The one tiny caveat I will place on that is the market that was in last year, that we probably went through that as well. Like I said, that market pricing has moved a little bit, but it's still possible. Maybe instead of 5, it's 4, but it's still definitely possible. But it's always putting the caveats on. It's always restrictive on budget and yields and what you need from that perspective as well.
Yeah, great. I think
thanks for writing in, big fella, big name.
You answered a question from Mikey as well, because he actually said you often speak about how you started and what people should do with a standard income and recycling equity. But what would you do differently if you had to start from scratch with a higher income, let's just say 250K of income, and you had 250K of savings and you were just starting? And I think you've pretty much answered that for him. So there you go. If you're on that kind of income and you got 250K of savings, obviously your serviceability is super strong. We don't know if you're on your own house or you're whatever you're doing, but with 250K, you can make some solid inroads with your foundational properties and build out pretty aggressively with that kind of number, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And look, I think it's always people kind of always ask me I do get asked that a lot. Like, how would I, if I had to start again right now, how would I do it? I wouldn't change anything from how I build clients' portfolios today. So even that example I gave before, I would start with 2 good, solid bread and butter deals, and then I would reassess the serviceability, would reassess the equity position, and then I would build again. Nothing would change from that perspective on how I build client portfolios now as well. It would just be a much more structured approach than how I did it back in the day as well. Because it was very haphazard how I built it. I did well, and I put a lot of sweat equity into my portfolio. I negotiated really hard in everything I did, but it was very haphazard. I didn't pick markets the way I pick markets these days. It's like with Nay, with what he's written in there as well. Those 5 properties that he bought, in that time frame, we actually ran his numbers. He's made over $1 million in the past 2 years in terms of growth with what he's bought as well. So, it can snowball quickly from that side as well.
This is a question from, sorry, do you have one?
Mate, let's keep jumping through the guys that have written in their questions early. I don't want to leave these guys out. Can we keep punching through these,
There are
mate?
so many great questions in the Q&A. We're going to have to copy these out and get these because there's some absolute crackers there. So well done, everyone.
We will,
It's
we
awesome.
will, and we might jump back into them in a little bit, guys. But we're gonna keep punching through these because the guys that have sent them in early, I want to make sure we get through as many of these as we can as well. There's one quick one here that we have from Big Lockie. You got from Lachlan here. When is the optimal time to start investing with the use of a trust? Now, one of the big things, guys, if you're a Scouting Australia podcast member, you would have learned a lot about trust within the course already. But in the live webinar that we're going to do soon for School of Property members as well, we're going to do a deep dive into all these questions as well that come up. So that's a question probably more for that one than it is for this one today, guys. So we'll keep punching on and moving through that.
Okay.
I have a next one here. This next one's from me, Jimmy, from Big Noah.
That's a
Jimmy
decent
Cleary,
question.
we lost
Is
him.
that, yeah, no, I'm here. Is this me to read this out to you?
No, it's me, mate. It's me.
Okay.
I'm going to punch this. All right, lads, I'm in the process of doing my first deal with you guys. Second investment and can't wait. I have a question about hitting borrowing caps and being unable to continue. I had a strategy call with Big Lukey about how to achieve our targets. And one of the key things stuck out to me was needing to get to around 6 to 8 properties to hit our total goal. I talked to my broker. He reckons we might get stuck on property 4 with borrowing caps. My partner and I are both on 100K a year. And I hear in the potties that Sammy started at 30K and was still able to continue to grow a portfolio way past 6 to 8. What's the secret here? How can we make 5 to 8 possible without finding jobs that pay us 200K a year? Now, look, guys, this is all about being strategic with your borrowing, with your buying, and what you go out there and purchase. Now, if you can get to 4 properties, that is great. What I would suggest is you look for a new broker or you buy a School of Property and you go through how to build a 10 plus property portfolio. And within that, we'll break down everything from that perspective. Because this is the stuff I'm talking about, guys, like this secret sauce and the juice, you know, all the stuff that comes through here. And Noah, mate, you working with Lukey and obviously working with us, you are going to get that information as we go through and as we build it. But the whole, again, guys, the whole point of the course, the whole reason that it's there and why we're building this thing and doing this thing is so that you learn it as well. So you learn it ahead of time. So you're just trying to preempt thing every time we get 1, 2 properties out. You're really learning this whole thing on how do you build to 6 to 8 or 10 or 20 or whatever you want to build to. That's what's all in there. So yeah, the strategies around that and how we keep going. And yeah, like obviously I started on 30K when I bought my first deal. I think I was on 50 when I bought my second, and slowly it built up. Never made more than 100 grand when I built the portfolio, but I surrounded myself with people that allowed me to get to these next points and these next milestones and helped me move past them. And mate, that's what you're doing working with us as well. So unfortunately, mate, not the platform to answer that question.
Well,
yeah,
the thing that jumps out for me is what is the broker basing that on? I think you want to ask a bit more questions, like what kind of yield, what kind of assumptions are they making? Are they saying, my gut feel is that the broker is thinking we're buying a very similar growth type property. So at that point, the yields or they're going to tap out because they're just not going to be able to service anymore. That's what my gut feel is. I don't know what you think, but you'd assume, right? So
I agree, man. Yeah, I agree. I was half assuming he would be working with one of our brokers if he's obviously working with us as a buyer's agency as well, but he might be wrong from that perspective too. But yeah, you're wanting to be preempting that. You know, if you're about to do your second deal, obviously pull the trigger on the second deal. But if you're going to get stuck on 4, you want to be preempting that and getting that correctly in the tank.
Okay.
From a lending perspective.
So ask better questions to your broker and just find out what,
100%.
And even having a conversation with Luke. Okay. My question to you, Sammy boy, this is from Glenn.
Here we go.
Sammy, how have you found that being successful at property investing has helped in other parts of your life? Having corporate jobs, I've found that having investments in property has changed the way I view issues, in brackets, focusing on strategy and performance against strategy instead of task orientation, close brackets. Okay. And it's given me the confidence to speak up when what we are doing isn't aligned to my strategy, which is awesome. That's pretty powerful stuff. So what about you?
Have I found it to be
successful? Yeah, in other parts of your life.
100%. Yeah. So I think like one of the biggest things, and this is why I talk about the different levels of being an investor. The longer you do this, the harder your skin gets, the thicker your armor gets. and the more that you can take on and weather and all the rest of it as well. And realistically, that is literally just growing as an individual, growing as a human being. I have chats with the guys in the team with this. I have chats with clients about this and everything as well. And you will build an armor the longer that you do this. And you will also learn how to navigate situations that you would never come into in your life. You know, things that, like, you know, you might have property managers or tenancy issues or lending and all these different things, you know, renovations that you might have to work a solution around and everything as well. And you'll come into so many different scenarios that you otherwise probably never would have come into in life. And you can build some ridiculous life experience out of doing it as well. So 100%, man, I agree with you. Hats off to you.
Yeah, well done.
Beautiful.
There is a couple of questions here on the sidebar here, Sammy boy.
Go on, mate.
A good one is, what is the lowest price for a high growth and high cash flow property are you currently buying? I'm running low on cash. This is from Anonymous. What would you say? Lowest price point
for
that
a
we're
capital
buying
growth
in?
deal?
Yeah.
Look,
And a
we
high
are
cash
still
flow
buying
property.
properties in the 200s, but the issue is stock is very, very tight. So lead times on that style of deal is starting to blow out. We actually had a big team meeting this morning about it. In particular, December and January, there's been almost no stock that's come through at those price points. So as of right now, with what we are still sourcing, you can still buy in the call it the high 200s. But the bulk of probably like the lower end of what you really, you know, of typically what we're able to source in a realistic time frame now is probably in the low threes. Your best buying abilities at the moment, you know, at the lower end sort of price points are probably like, you know, 350 to 400,000. There's a lot of good opportunities we're seeing out there in the market, you know, 5 to 600 grand. So obviously, I know he's not asking around that upper limit, but that's kind of giving a bit of you know, brush strokes of what we're doing at the moment and where it's all sitting. But bottom end, you're looking at, if you had the absolute minimum you had to work with was in the high 200, we could still facilitate that purchase if that was the, you know, absolute worst case scenario.
Got it.
Anything else, Jimmy?
Well, there are so many here, Sammy. I don't know when you're going to cut us off, but do you want
Go
me
one
to
more good one? I want a good one. Not saying that wasn't
good. Ooh, I can't ask you that one. This one is, well, you know this from experience. It's just something that jumped out. If servicing isn't an issue, but deposit is, have you ever seen anyone get a personal loan of, say, 10 to 20K to get a cracking deal over the line?
Yes.
Can you elaborate any more? So you would do it if it was a cracking
She's saying,
deal?
have I seen it before? Or he or she saying,
No,
have I seen it before?
I know it's you, but so just to give them confidence, because some people, it depends on the deal, right? If you're going to take out a personal loan, you got to be very careful what you're getting yourself into. And obviously, is the deal going to justify that kind of loan?
Yeah.
But would you advise clients out there that are listening not to do this if you're not experienced, not to do this if you're not very confident that it's going to work out?
That wasn't the question. The question was, have I seen this done before? And the answer is
but
yes.
you got to give a bit more bloody juice.
Yeah,
Give the people.
Would I advise people to do it? No. Like, look for all other avenues before you go down that route. But yeah, man, I've seen people do it, and if you like, this is where it's kind of like, do you want to be super bullish? But it's always got to be like, what's your exit around it as well? You know, if your exit is recycling equity in 12 months to pay for it, but your interest rate's 15%, like it's risky, you know, it is risky. And I think that's something that people have to be aware of from that perspective as well. But I have always been of the mindset and of the vein of thinking that if something can get me into a deal and there's no other avenues, as long as it's not going to sink me, like you don't want to sink the ship for the idea of buying one more deal. But if you're able to do that, to purchase a deal, one more deal for that scenario, and you can afford that for, maybe you can pay it off in 12 months or something like that, and it can get you into a cracking deal and keep the portfolio moving forward. For me personally, yeah, like I personally would do it, but
okay, not
advice to go out there and do it.
Mate, I have to say these two because this is a really good one.
Let's go.
This was from Peter. He said hypothetically. Basically, if you want a decent income, say 150K, but you had 150K in super, would you move to property immediately knowing what you know today? Or would you wait until the magical $200,000 to be safe? I'm yet to see anyone in the industry say the SMSF property route, apart from Sammy, can be done with a sub 200K.
So like I said, not financial advice at all. Just from personal experience, I have done it. I bought my first one with $78,000 of my own contributions. Now, I had to have something I forgot to mention before as well. You need to have a liquidity amount above that as well. It's typically 5 to 10%. But just from personal experience, I was able to buy with less than that. You just need to find, actually, I'm not even going to say anything else beyond that. That's just, and I know, mate, like I know exactly what you're saying there, buddy. Like most people do say 200,000 plus. But yes, you can do it with less.
And if I can throw something in there, so I can talk about my situation. I've got 300K in super. I've rolled that into a self-managed super fund, and my intention is to buy 2 properties out of that if I can. So using your question, Peter, 150K as a deposit will be more than enough for me from what I feel is comfortable to get into that. So I think it's a load of crap basically waiting for 200.
It's not a load of crap. What it is that what do you call them?
Depending on the
Financial
type
planners.
of property.
No, but financial planners, a lot of them have an insurance limit that won't allow them to advise under $200,000 or under $250,000 or $300,000. It depends what their insurance limit is, and that's why that is bandied around so much, because it can get quite expensive for them to give advice for anyone with a balance of less than that. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't like touching into the SMSF. It's a very litigious space. But that is the reason why. Most of them won't give the advice to buy sub that $200,000 amount. But
great.
I said my piece. You said there was another one?
Well, there was this more of a comment about the School of Property, which I thought might be a segue, right? Because this is from Luke O'Brien, and we're not, this is just his words. I don't know, Luke, but I'm sure you do.
I think Lukey's got a question in here, Luke O'Brien.
Yeah. Well, he says not a question, but a shout out to those on the fence about investing in the School of Property. He says, I'm not a level 10 investor, but have bought and built multiple properties and build houses as my day job. So I feel like I have a solid knowledge base around property. Great. There was so much in this course that I didn't know, and it will pay for itself multiple times over in the future, without a doubt. Cheers for all the info. I can't imagine where I would have learned this much in such a condensed format.
Lukey, thank you very much, mate. Appreciate it.
Well done. That was brilliant.
Appreciate it, mate. Yeah, it was very good. He's got a great question coming up as well.
Is that highlighted for you or me?
I don't know, mate. It's not here yet. Let's keep punching through this list. This is me next up. Thank you, Lukey. Appreciate it, mate. Big fella, appreciate the shout out, man. And I'm glad you enjoyed and took a lot out of that as well. Jimmy, are you ready?
Yeah, mate.
As a full-time athlete, in brackets, Jimmy, you would not know anything about this.
Neither would you.
Close brackets. With varying income based on monetary bonuses from successful racing, is it best to start investing now or wait until I have a consistent income or salary at the end of the year? Details are 100K ready to use, motivated to build a portfolio aggressively. 24 years old, Big Jackson. Mate, thank you for sending that in. Jimmy?
Mate, I think the best time to buy is when you can buy. I wouldn't wait. I wouldn't wait. I mean, the old saying is the best time to buy was yesterday and the second best time today. I would think that the faster you can get your money working for you, the better, through using leverage and compounding. I think there's so much opportunity out there. I wouldn't wait for a better time, because there will always be another better time. And the better time after that, do it now. You won't regret it.
Quick thing I'll throw in there, Jackson, mate, you just need a good broker that's going to be able to help you with the commission sort of, I understand it's more from, earnings that you make from the racing and whatnot, the bonuses and whatnot, as you said there. Man, you need someone that kind of understands it from that perspective to get you your borrowing. Mate, if it was me, exactly the same as Jimmy, I wouldn't be waiting, man. If you've got the ability to do it, you're 24, you're doing this on, mate, most athletes, you're not going to be stopping anytime soon. You're probably, I don't know exactly in terms of racing, exactly what you do, man, but you've probably got like 5-10 years left in the tank at least. So man, you want to get these things ticking over ASAP. Like, one of the biggest regrets I always see from people, regardless of their age group, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, doesn't matter what it is. Even I have it. I wish I went harder earlier. Everyone wishes they went harder earlier. If you've got the ability to do it now, go sink a deal in there. Mate, keep yourself a buffer so you don't even have to, so it's never on your mind. So you just, you're just thinking about your racing and competing and doing well. And man, let that thing tick over in the background, grow for you, create some nice equity. And when that equity's there, maybe pull that out and go again and keep building it like that. So man, that's how I would be doing it. And I definitely wouldn't sit in the sidelines and wait it out.
Can I also say on the reverse
Yes,
of that, when you start actually, if you did buy something, you'll be surprised at the flow and effect outside of that in terms of your racing or your income, because you have something that you're committed to. It's actually going to spur you along to actually save more, get your finances in order, because you've got a reason of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I love that it almost just gets people on the straight and narrow in terms of, I've got a clear agenda of what I'm doing, and you get motivated to work towards that goal. So
Yeah.
don't wait for a better time. Take it from me. I waited too bloody long. And any young investor that I speak to, I'm like,
Centuries.
man, I'm actually envious. All the clients that I speak to, I actually say, I am so envious of you, because the one thing that you have over me is time. And time is your biggest commodity. So if you're 24 and you can do this now, whether you're 24, 34, 44, in 10 years, you're going to wish you had more time. So don't waste time. Don't waste time.
Definitely plug a few into the portfolio. No question.
100%.
No question.
All right. Sammy, question. Will the course be able to help to create high cash flow properties? And number two, will I learn how to do efficiently, an efficient renovation, looking from an ROI perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So both of those segments are within the course. When it comes to cash flow, there is literally multiple. There's a specific module itself on cash flow properties, and then many lessons around that as well. And more of those are being plugged in as well. Especially now that I'm back, there's still a lot more videos that I'm going to be recording and uploading in there, guys. I think at the moment there's about 80 in total lessons that are within this thing, something like 60 hours or something of content, and we haven't finished there. You know, there's a lot more coming in, and even from a lot of these questions, we're going to be recording webinars and then uploading those into the platform, so they're always going to be there on demand as well. The questions that other people might be thinking of, you know, that you would benefit from the answers as well. So in terms of creating high cash flow property, yes, definitely there's going to be multiple strategies, and there are multiple strategies within that, you know, to be able to implement from a cash flow perspective. Will you learn how to efficiently renovate? Definitely. There is also another renovation module in there, and there are other things being added in even further around renovations as well. So yeah, renos are a big thing, and cash flow are two big sort of strategies that we love here at APS and at School of Property. And the cool thing is obviously overlaying them and getting the results from overlaying them, and having multi-layers and strategies on different deals as well. So yeah, man, 100% all that stuff's in there too.
Okay. We've sort of touched on this, but I'll ask the question anyway. When does borrowing power become a hurdle in developing a portfolio? I think you've pretty much covered that. Do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, borrowing power becomes a hurdle. Obviously, when you're running out of serviceability, you need to preempt that with certain strategies. Yeah, we touched on that earlier for sure.
We've touched on SMSF. There's a question there from Andy, so I think we'll pass on that one. Right? You happy with that?
Yeah.
Keisha's done that one. Do you want me to do this, Big Daddy-O?
Yeah.
Decent one from Scotty.
Mate,
all right.
Mate, we're doing all three in 3 minutes. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. So 3 questions from Scotty. Number 1, where exactly do you get the data metrics from for up and coming areas for investing? Are you relying on monthly reports, suburb
I'm going to
finder?
quickly answer this one before Jimmy waffles too long. That is
just
Lukey's
the first
podcast
question.
in School of Property answers exactly how we go through that. Go to number 2.
For the first few properties, I understand we need to come up with the deposits circa 11% plus stamps and legals and APS's fee. With each property, we would be expecting to put money in each month to cover the shortfall in yield.
Okay.
If we pull out equity for the further purchases, do we then have to target manufactured cash flow deals moving forward in order to increase the yield to ensure we don't need to be paying the money out of our own pockets?
Yep.
So he's trying to understand the balance of growth and servicing that if it's potentially negatively geared.
So look, at the moment, we definitely are coming into more and more negatively geared properties, especially from a growth perspective. When they do whatever it's been, 4.5% pretty much of interest rate increases. Yes, like properties are going to turn from $5,000 a year positive to $5,000 a year negative. It takes time for that to wash out and for rents to rise. Even though rents have considerably risen as well, you're still going to cop that shortfall because it is quite a large amount. And yeah, man, the way that you're talking about doing it, offsetting it, obviously there's a few things you can do, some different strategies to help drive cash flow and to make sure that the cash flows on that property are maximized. That's one of the biggest things I would say to take into account, is have a really good look at what you could trim up on that property or boost from a rental perspective on each individual deal as well. And then, yes, as you get further along, yeah, man, I always suggest to start with bread and butter deals and building out those foundations and really getting that flowing as well. You know, because that's going to keep giving you deposits to be able to keep building the portfolio. But as you get further along, building cash flow deals in there, it's a double-edged sword in a good way, right? It's I call them like the oxygen, the lifeblood of the portfolio. They keep the serviceability strong, but then they also cover the shortfall of the other deals, or the correct ones will do. They will cover the shortfall of the other deals as well. So they can be very strong from that perspective, and yeah, help cancel the other deals out.
All right, last one, Sammy boy. At which point should you switch to a trust structure? When are you tapped out?
Let's jump that one as well. Well, all the stuff with the trust, guys, like everything that I go into in detail with the trust, the reason why I don't do it is it took me, like the reason I don't go in depth around trust structures and all the rest of it as well, is it took me a long time and a lot of different jumping around to really learn it. You know, if you're an APS client or if you're a school of property student or both, you will have a very good understanding around it. And, you know, with our clients at APS, obviously this is something we really help them navigate within this as well. But within school of property, it's a really, really deep structured breakdown of exactly how trust structures work and how you can keep building a portfolio as well. So it really breaks everything down so you can understand this thing implicitly, so you can keep building and moving forward within your own portfolio.
But also, Sammy, with your accountant and your broker, like obviously both of them have to be on the same page, because you're going to get lending in one of them.
And you need very high level. Like there isn't, most brokers don't understand it. Most accountants don't understand it. And when I say understand it, I mean understand how to do it properly. All right.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Beautiful. Next up, I got a couple of questions. From Big Drew. When will we see the silver fox do the worm? Hashtag silver worm. Jimmy.
Mate, it's more of just a fat slug. It's a bit lazy.
You're not
so
fat,
I don't think I can do the worm with the back and so forth. I definitely can't do the worm like you.
How's the shoulder?
I'll leave those childish games to Sammy. That's more for you.
Hey, so you're calling Drew childish?
No, childish games for you.
Mate, it's a talent.
Next.
All right. Big nay. Next up, depreciation differences on a new build granny. I'm guessing he's kind of meaning like a brick or a weatherboard versus a transportable / modular. Currently stuck for purchasing with servicing. Selling a bread and butter is an option. If I sell and have 300 to 350 grand cash to invest, what would be the best steps? I have 2 granny locations and my first aim is 150K passive income. Not all my properties have hit the peaks and we are hopeful of 15 to 20K in rises in personal income. We've just started buying in our first trust. What do you advise? As always, guys, nothing we say is financial advice, but what I would really be looking at here, look, if you've got, I'm guessing you're kind of meaning that you have 2 properties that have the granny ability on them that you've got within the portfolio as well. Look, what you could do if you sell and you got 300, 350K cash to invest, you could build 2 granny flats in cash, and then you could always refinance that cash back out once they've been finished, and then go and recycle that into some other deals somewhere else. It would take out the need for construction lending and going down that avenue. It would be a pretty decent avenue. I personally build grannies in cash as well. And then once they're done, I refinance that cash back out, keep moving it, keep that velocity of money going. So I don't mind that as a strategy. And if servicing is becoming an issue, you sell off a bread and butter, you build 2 granny flats. I can say you're going to go pretty close to solving a lot of those serviceability problems as well. In terms of the depreciation differences on a new build versus transportable modular, it does come down to essentially to the cost differences on them and what they're built with as well. I couldn't give you the exact details because obviously it really depends on what they're built, what they cost to build as well, and how they do get drawn up by the quantity surveyor also. So suffice to say, you're going to be significantly less for your transportable, your modular over your new build, because your new builds typically are anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000 dearer than your modular. So I probably would estimate, you're probably sitting at 50 to 60% in terms of depreciation on a modular compared to a properly built. But there's pros and cons to both, as well. It's not just depreciation, as we know.
Well done, Sammy boy.
You mean, let's smash
Rachel,
them. I think we've got about 10 left, mate. Let's go.
Are we still going to go through all these? Is that what we're doing? Rachel, what can I learn from this course, Sammy, compared to all the other courses out there?
Yes.
Do you learn how to source a lucrative location? So basically, she wants to know why
what's the difference?
Property compared to some other courses that maybe those guys have much better hair and, wear fancier clothes and drive nicer cars.
Maybe. I don't know too many that drive nicer cars. They might have nicer hair.
I knew you wouldn't be able to let that one go.
Definitely not, mate. Definitely not.
Go on.
Look, what I can probably say in terms of courses and what the others have within theirs, and this is just based off feedback from clients that have done other people's courses and then have done ours as well. The biggest feedback I get is the way we structure the course, for one, in terms of building out the foundational learnings, but then going through and then it literally teaches you how to build out a portfolio in terms of structuring and the correct deals, and then, different pieces in terms of when we need to sell or when we need to buy what deals and how to do that and all the rest of it as well. It's literally the whole puzzle. So it's not just like a haphazard, here's 20, 30, 50 videos, just watch them. There is structure to the way that this thing is built out, and it's designed that way. So you literally build the knowledge base from the ground up, and then you literally keep leveling up as an investor. One of the oldest sayings in the book is you don't know what you don't know. And my honest opinion is there is no one else out there in the Australian property game that I have seen that has done what I've done from how low I was. There's no one else that's done it. There's been other people who have built significant portfolios now, but they've been running a buyer's agency for 6, 7, 8 years, or at least 5 years or whatever. Actually, it's longer because I've been running almost for 5 years. I've been running for over 5 years now myself. So some of these guys might have been running it for 8, 10 years. I built at least half of my portfolio for where we are now. I was over 20 properties in before I even started the buyer's agency. Most guys might have had a couple of properties and then started it. And this is buyer's agency courses. Courses is another big one that's out there as well. There's a lot of people now that might have a very large portfolio, maybe an 8-figure plus portfolio. But how many properties did they start with when they started the course, when they did the course? A lot of them made a lot of money from that and then went out and invested. And they went out and invested after making a lot of money. It's very different building a portfolio as an average Australian income compared to someone that is on a very high income. And really, that is how I teach how to build the portfolio, building it from an average Australian income, not from, limitless money or whatever of trying to do it like that. It is how to build it literally from the ground up, and learning and understanding all the fundamentals. And pretty much, like, a lot of people always joke that I'm cagey. I'm cagey for a reason. It took me ages to learn what I learned, and I had to go through and wade through a lot of shit to get there. And I had to wade through a lot of people, as well to get there as well. So with what I've learned, I don't just give it away to everyone for free. Yes, I talk to clients about it, and I give a fair bit back on the podcast as well. But the stuff that's in there, that's in this, is the stuff that's not in the podcast. And it's, in my opinion, it's the stuff that the other guys haven't gone through to learn that stuff, to really, understand how to give it back as well. So there's honestly, there's so much in there. Like I said, there's about 70, 80 odd videos, whatever that's in there now. There's all the different, modules in terms of like how to build these different avenues, and then, working through all the different structures of how to build, where you need to take a step back, keep building beyond it, and everything else. There's a ridiculous amount in it. Literally the easiest way I would explain it is no one's done what I've done from the level that I was, making as little as I made, starting with what I started with, to where I've gotten to now. In my opinion, no one else has done it at that level. So that's essentially what you get to tap into.
Okay, great. I think, do you want to throw to some of yours, or do you want me to, there's one actually here. It says for you, Sammy, speaking of your knowledge, what is the biggest client portfolio built through APS, either number of properties or dollar value so far, through, other than your own portfolio, obviously?
Yeah. We would have, there'd be about, I probably don't know. I don't know the exact number around that, guys. One of the biggest clients that we had just went through a big sell down of his portfolio because he made about 4 million, I think it was, and he sold down a huge bunch of his properties and went out and bought like a $5 million primary residence. Just thinking of some people off the top of my head, there would be multiple dozens that have 10 plus property portfolios. There'd be a handful that would be 20 plus. Yeah, guys, I don't know the exact numbers to be honest in terms of exactly what it is.
Fantastic. All right.
Beautiful. Man, I'm going to run through a couple of these just quickly, all right?
Yeah, let's do
Jimmy,
that.
Is there ever, I might even just quickly answer them now as well.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go through and bang a few of these out real quick. From Leilani. Hi, Sammy. Is it still possible to find high growth properties at 300K or circa 300K to grow out your portfolio? Or is that a thing of the past? As we ran through earlier, it is still possible, but it is getting much, much tighter. So it is possible, but yeah, a lot tighter. If you can spend that little bit more, you can typically get a better property in a better area. Hey, Sam and Jimmy, great stuff on the potty. I'm an avid listener and 3-time APS client. This is big Emmanuel. I'm extremely happy with the 3 purchases so far. My question is, when equity is not an issue, thanks to you guys who picked up assets for me that almost doubled in the last 2 to 3 years, borrowing capacity is pretty tight, even having purchased a third IP in a trust. What are some practical tweaks we can apply to improve it? I just had a baby, so I won't be able to borrow only under my own name now. Not looking for financial advice, but for past experience from APS clients. So big Emmanuel, mate, this is one of the things we bought majority of your stuff. I remember it was pre-baby, mate, when your serviceability was a bit different and, we were able to build it in a bit of a different way. This was going back 12 months ago. And obviously interest rates have gone on a big run since there as well. One of the things I would look at, mate, is a couple of your deals would be getting pretty close to the peak in the current cycles that they're in. If you currently don't have serviceability, and that's going to be a bit of a struggle for you as well, what you could do is, as those markets peak out, maybe in the next 12 or so months, you could look to offload 1 or 2 of those deals and then reset and start again. That is more than likely what I would look to do now. You can always tweak a few of the existing properties with the same things we were talking about before, with the couple of different renovations and whatnot, and just seeing in terms of holding costs what you could trim up as well. But that's one of those things, mate, that especially if the new dependents come in as well, it blows a lot of things out by a fair bit. It might be a little bit of wait and see for you from that perspective until those markets peak out, because it's also like, bird in the hand, 2 in the bush sort of thing. If you sell out now, but the market's still got 100 grand in the next 12 months, I'd probably carry it, get the extra 100 grand, sell it down and go, wait that period of time as well.
Okay. Sammy, this is a great question from David DeBono. Is there ever a case of utilizing the first home owner benefits for an investment property?
Occasionally, very, very occasionally. But the big caveat on this, and I had a prospective client's dad message me directly on Instagram the other day and actually asked me something very similar to this, because he was trying to talk his I can't remember, it was a son or a daughter or something, out of going off and buying an investment because they were going to give up all their first homeowner grants. But the area that they were in was cooked and it had massive growth. And then the only thing they could buy with the first homeowner grants to get all the grants was to buy a tiny block, overpriced house and land package. And in my opinion, it's literally like the worst asset that they could buy. So even though the dad was trying to do the right thing by saying, buy with your grants and get your stamp duty exemption, get your extra 10, 20 grand, whatever it was, all the rest of it, he had the right intentions in mind, but ultimately it's the wrong asset. And so it always comes back to the asset. And if you can buy in the right area, and from some Hail Mary, your area is going to be a great growth location that's going to outperform 90% of the country in the next 1, 2, 3 years, then yes, I think there is potential for it. And it can sometimes work out, but majority of the time, no. I wouldn't be looking to take advantage of it, and I would be looking to invest somewhere that's actually going to pay me a return sooner so I can keep scaling and building the portfolio. That is typically the key, obviously, scaling and building it. If we use the example of old mate that was trying to help his son, that messaged me as well, he's got his heart in the right place, but the issue is if his kid buys that property and the property might come back in value, and it's not going to help him get to the next deal. And when we're talking about building a property portfolio, that's the whole purpose of this thing, is keep building it and scaling it. You can't retire off 1 deal or 2 deals. You need to build a portfolio to actually get a great result.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Go,
so
Jimmy.
That's
keep
a very good
mate.
answer. Well, this one's from James Rodder. Does the School of Property unpack the ideal trust structure in detail, which you pretty much already covered on that one? Do you go through examples and
No.
targets?
The rest of
No.
that question is good, Jimmy. Read that first one.
Okay.
Finish that one.
Does the School of Property unpack the ideal trust structuring in detail, e.g., number of properties and property
Yes.
types, bread and butters, cash flow deals? I really want to learn to scale a portfolio to a large one like yours, Sammy. So that's the
Yes.
first question.
You mean
The
to
answer
answer
is
that
yes.
first?
Well, yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, go for it. Go for your second one if you want.
Okay. The second one is, do you go through examples and target suburbs within School of Property? We all know outside of this, Sammy Boy holds cards close to his chest and doesn't give much away regarding the locations, especially across the podcasts.
Thanks, James.
So this is for James.
You're a good bloke, mate. In line with not giving away essentially or butchering APS. No, we don't. We don't give away locations. Lukey and I go quite in depth in terms of why we pick locations. And essentially, if you went out there and applied that yourself and put a lot of time and effort into it, yes, you probably could pick locations off the back of it. We don't give suburbs that we're buying or anything within the course, if that makes sense. But we do go through why we select areas within the session, the macro and micro economic sessions with Lukey and I. In terms of the first question, does School of Property unpack the ideal trust structuring in detail and e.g. number of properties and property types per trust? Yes. This is something that I go into in quite a lot of depth and detail, especially when we're talking about, how to build a $250,000 passive income portfolio. How do we build out $500,000 passive income portfolio? Those videos are there in the course, and I go through in detail how to do that within those lessons and within those modules as well. So to answer your question, mate, yes, definitely, and they're pretty juicy apps as well.
Okay. Perfect. Next one this one's from Lukey about second and third tier lenders. Do you want me to jump into that?
This is Lukey Ibrahim from before. Made the post.
He's self-employed, and the mainstream banks hate it. He subcontracts to a builder, and in the past, he's found it easier to jump on PAYG for a period when he needs to borrow.
Yes.
But this can also be a hassle. So his broker has said to him that he needs 2 good years history in the company, showing what he has earned and to show that he's earned enough to support his current wages in those previous years. He came unstuck last year when attempting to lend using his self-employed income, and the banks kept moving the goalposts each time they satisfied the previous hurdles that were thrown at him. So his question is around second or third tier lenders. Do they look as closely at previous year's company history, or is it a case of as long as the company was profitable and my current wages can service the new debt I'm chasing, if that can work? Is that right, Sammy?
Is it a case of I'm around second and third tier lenders? Do they look as closely at previous company history as a case, or as long as the company was profitable and my current wages can service a new debt I'm chasing, it can work? It is always case by case. And it's case by case with the lenders, and it's case by case with your personal situation. I know with myself, I ran into a lot of issues with lending when I left my full-time employment and started APS. Something that is coming out in the month of February, Lukey, is low doc lending and how to utilize that within your own portfolio. Mate, what I'd say is flick us a email or a message tomorrow, and I'll give you details to my broker. And mate, she's the one that set up all my low doc lending during COVID, man. So if anyone's going to get it done for you, mate, she will.
All right, Sammy boy, this is a great one from Belinda. If I have a borrowing capacity of around 1.5 to 2 mil, am I better off to buy multiple residential properties, or should I be looking at other investment types such as commercial property? How do you decide when someone is ready to go from building their property foundations to a more acceleration phase type purchases?
Yes.
What do you think?
It depends on where she's at in her portfolio. So I have no issues with commercial if someone is a fair way down their journey and it's like a back-end cash flow play. I like commercial for that. I have commercial in my own portfolio for that as well. But it really depends on where they're at in their portfolio and in their journey. Like I said, it's a back-end play. If you have borrowing capacity 1.5 to 2 mil and you don't really have, let's say you don't have any resi properties, or you might have 1 or 2 or something like that, my personal opinion is I would probably start with building that out harder first, because the next few years, if you buy in the correct growth locations, there's a pretty good chance the next 3 to 5 years you could double that money, right? Like we could go out there, put that in the marketplace, go through a significant growth cycle, buying in the right locations, and go pretty close to seeing that figure that I was mentioned then. So if you're able to go and do that, and then in 3 to 5 years you can go out and buy a commercial property at 50% LVR with $2 million worth of cash. To me, that's a better scenario and a better outcome than going and trying to buy it now, not leaving enough over to be able to buy any resi properties as well, and just kind of handicapping yourself and getting yourself like a subpar commercial deal. The biggest mistake I see people make with commercial is they go, well, I can buy a commercial now at whatever figure, so I'm going to go buy to that money. And they buy a subpar commercial deal just because they can. And I typically find it's quite a big mistake. Me personally, I like to buy a better quality, a larger property and a better quality property when it comes to commercial. It's just the way that I like to play the game in that end. So I prefer to build out the resi space first. Even when it comes to resi cash flow, it's something I prefer to really just like bulk up on that stuff first before I then turn to commercial. Like I said, it's kind of more of a back end play for me when I do it. So, if I had 1.5 to 2 mil of borrowing capacity right now to go out and put it into the marketplace, I will be targeting good, strong growth locations with that. If that's it as a max, you might leave, if it's 1.5 to 2, you might go put, 1.4, 1.5 mil into high growth properties. And then you might leave the $500,000 to $600,000 left over for a cash flow deal after that as well. So that's where I'd probably be going rather than turning straight to commercial at this point.
Because you're basically saying that the lower quality commercials, there's more risk, right? That's what
Yes.
we're trying to say is more risk.
Yep.
Okay. We've got a couple more here, Sammy. And I know we're going to talk about School of Property, but this one, just on the chat, I thought it was just a really interesting one. Do you think in the near future, 5 to 15 years, there could possibly be a housing market crash?
Here we go.
Good signs that APS could see this if it was coming or not? Would you be able to see it? So do you think there's a crash, and could you see it coming or not?
We're talking, has this fella referenced a certain Philip?
No, he's not talking about the clock. No.
Yeah, I saw a couple of notes in there. It was actually funny. It was a bunch in this doc, and then there was a bunch that had been sent through in that chat as well around Philip J. Anderson's 18.6 year cycle and all the rest of the stuff. I don't believe in any of that sort of stuff. Something being that cyclical and that clockwork, especially in a market like the Australian property market that is so cyclical itself. Like you look at Sydney in 2003 to 2013, it did nothing. Literally went sideways. If anything, it went backwards. But then in 2013 to 2023, if you bought in the right area, it quadrupled, right? It doubled and then doubled again. If you bought in the right area from 2013 to 2023. But in that time, there was a lot of other areas that did nothing. But then if you look at 2003 to 2013, when it did nothing, there were places like Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, Darwin, all these different places, a lot of other capitals that doubled in that time frame as well. So it's Australia is such a cyclical market in itself. To say that the whole housing market is going to crash at this 18.6 year window, I personally, I just can't see how it can happen. We are a very debt conscious country. So Philip J. Anderson's cycle is modeled off America, which is a very, and I know he's not talking specifically about this, but I saw a lot of these questions. I have these answers where I stand on it to a lot of people out there as well, is, it's modeled off the American economy and the American way of doing things. And yes, to an extent, we are closely linked, but we also have a very, very different debt tolerance and debt cycle to them as well. And I just don't see it playing out the same way, because from a debt perspective, like a lot of people think that we're, there are people that are near the limit sort of thing, but we're a very debt conscious country, from an investing perspective as well. And you look at all the different boards we have, the RBA, we have APRA, and the banks themselves that literally, yes, they make a lot of money off us by lending us money, but they're also extremely conservative, organizations as well. So I personally don't see it happening like that at all. And I wouldn't be banking on that happening whatsoever.
Okay.
Was there anything else within that question, or was it just, do I see a crash coming?
No, that was pretty much the main thing, really. I guess I was just curious to get your take.
The easiest way to mitigate this, right? And this is one of the biggest things that I always talk to people about. And Jimmy, I harp on about this all the time, right? But it's consolidating, it's selling bread and butters when they're at their peak, right? So like if you were scared about that at all, but you had bread and butters that peak out, and you sell them off and you clear your debt, on those properties, and then your debt reducing your cash flow deals. It's going through debt consolidation as well. And so if you're playing this long game of property never goes down and I'm going to own it forever and never buy, always buy, never sell, whatever, all these sayings and everything, all right, you might be exposed at some point if anything ever did happen. But if you're going through the sell down and the consolidation phases that are so crucial, in building a portfolio and actually getting to a solid passive income in a realistic time frame, not, in 30 years, you're going to go through debt consolidation anyway. And when you debt consolidate, the market could do whatever it wants. But if you own those properties at a very low debt level, you have no exposure. And that's what I love, essentially about our strategy and what we do. When you have no exposure and your debt levels are so low, there's so little to be afraid of within it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're de-risking your portfolio. You're
100%.
bulletproof. If you've got passive income and you've got low debt, regardless of what inflation does, what, recession does, you are bulletproof. So I love that. And it's actually interesting because you often say, people think that you, Sammy, because you've got such a large portfolio, they think you're very aggressive and you'll buy, you just constantly buy. But a lot of people who don't know you well won't know that you're actually quite conservative, which is quite counterintuitive to have a really large portfolio. But the biggest thing that I learned from you early days is that you're always looking at the downside risk and positioning yourself to weather that cyclical downturn. And that only comes from selling down your portfolio. So there's a lot of gems in how you've built out your portfolio that people wouldn't naturally think because you've got such a big volume of property. Don't you think?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree. For sure. For sure.
The last two questions, if you're happy to wrap it up after these two, Sammy.
Mate, I'm just going to quickly jump in with two that are on the right first in the chat box. So I know we can bang them out real quickly. We've got Big Robbie that's written in there. Can we engage APS to do SMSF deals? Yes, 100%. We do SMSF deals for ourselves, for clients and everything as well. One other one quickly as well is Stefan, who wrote in and said, how do you define each level of investor? Man, I throw it away and I bandy around with the term of like different level of investors and everything. Mate, I don't have a set parameter. Jimmy's definitely a negative 100, or probably negative 3,000 in line with his age. Now, man, typically like your level one is someone who has literally no idea or they're just starting to learn, and it just goes up within your level, different, it's around knowledge and experience. I don't have an exact defined, amount with it, but it's more like when you're kind of looking at someone or referencing them or what they've done before or what they maybe, where their headspace and everything's at as well. That's where everything kind of starts to kind of weigh in and marry up with that as well. There's no great, defined formula around it as well.
Sammy, this is a cracker from Jason. With APS growing in popularity and clientele, do you guys reckon you have the potential to influence specific markets just based off the amount of clients you have going through? Like, for example, if you have 50 clients with the same price range, surely you have the power to pick an area and just buy there and thus drive the market up with the 50% influx of purchases. What's your thoughts on that in terms of manipulating the market?
Yeah, we could do that. Realistically, with the way that we buy, because we focus so much on discounts, yes, when we enter a market that's at the bottom of its cycle, a lot of the time we can buy out the bottom end of the market. So if we might go in and buy out the bottom, but we make discounts on the way into those deals as well. But then when you clear out the bottom end of that stock, it does do a jump from that end as well. But we don't go in there to, intentionally try and fluctuate the market. But the biggest reason why we don't do that is because we're always targeting the biggest discounts that we can get for our clients. That's the biggest thing that we typically work on to do with that as well. So yeah, man, like realistically, we probably could have a little bit of influence. The biggest thing to remember as well is like, we probably could at the moment when markets are so tight, if we just went in there and just go, all right, we're going to pay market value for everything in this market right now. Yeah, we would probably force it into a price jump. But ultimately, like, yeah, we're not doing the right thing for our clients on that side either. So it's one of those things, man. But realistically, yeah, it's just where the market is in terms of stock being so tight right now. Like that is is potentially a risk that kind of comes in there as well. But yeah, man, ideally we're always looking to obviously pick our clients up the discounts on that. And when you're doing discounts of that sort of, you can't pump discount at volume either, right? So that's the biggest thing to remember. I know a lot of other, I won't say a lot because I wouldn't say I'm friends with that many buyers agents in the industry. I think I butt heads with too many of them. But a few of the mates that I've got that are in the industry, they always ask me about discounts. Like, are you really actually getting the discounts? And I don't know if you remember, even Big Liam asked us at the end of last year on the round table, like he didn't actually believe it until he came into the business and then saw what we were doing. And we sourced one for him as well. And he saw that, the actual proof in the pudding. When you buy like that and you're that committed to that, mate, you can't do that on serious volume, in all honesty.
Good answer. Last couple of questions here, Sammy. This is from Maddie. What are the advantages of purchasing school of property if people are already working with APS? So they're already using the buyer's agency. What do you think?
Yeah, that is a great question. Look, ultimately, utilizing APS, we are going to be able to help you with pretty much everything within your own journey. Obviously, look, one of the big things that's currently on the table, I don't know if I'll leave it there forever, but essentially, if you work with APS, you get 50% of whatever you pay for the course. You get that back off your buyer's agency fee anyway when you go to the next deal. So the course for APS clients is actually very cheap for what it is and the amount of quality that's within it as well. But the real thing, Maddie, mate, if you're like, I'm not sure the exact level of investor that you are as well for yourself. But man, let's say you're in the beginning, first couple of deals in your own portfolio, and you're just starting to, build that knowledge base. You might be having a chat with Lukey or me or whatever, and you're starting to build it out. Man, what you're going to find is that you're going to learn information and you're going to experience things as you go. Yeah. And that's going to be amazing. And you're going to learn a lot from that as you go through. The idea of the course is fast forward 10 years when you've got the portfolio you wanted to build out. You have, let's say you got 10 properties and you got sitting on 40% LVR and you got 150 grand per annum net passive coming in, just as an example, right? Think of fast forwarding all those years of accumulation and figuring it out and then coming back to us with questions and then working it out. And then we do this and we do that and all the rest of it. Imagine condensing that down into about, it's probably going to end up being 100 lessons. Think of 10 years of experience that you will gain doing all the deals and knocking it all over. And yes, whether you're working with us or, working with us, you will learn it, but it'll take you 10 years to learn it. There'll be hand-holding with it. You're going to learn it through that process before you get there. So you're going to get that knowledge base. So you're going to understand what we're going to be doing and helping you with. So you actually, you're figuring it out, or you're figuring it out beforehand. So you have a good understanding of it. So you can fast track it as quickly as possible. You know what you're working towards. And even from an education and an information perspective, yes, from a deal perspective, you might still be relying on us and we're still sourcing cracker deals for you. But from an education and information perspective, you're learning that, you're building that yourself, as you go out there as well. So, man, it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. And if I could pay for this back at the very start and fast track everything I know now back to when I was 19 and bought my first property, I wouldn't have bought that property. I would have changed what I did and built it so much differently. And even when I went on to number two and, I look at the 3-year gaps between number 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3 and all the rest of it. And then it started to ramp. That's 6 years of education piece that I learned then as well. That's just in the fundamentals of the course. So think about everything else that came after it. And mate, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Sammy. Perfect. Well, we've got to the last question here, Sammy boy, and Jaden, a great client of APS, great fella.
He's a legend.
Hey, Jimmy and Sammy boy, not sure if this is the right question for the webinar, but I'll send it anyway. Well, clearly it's worked out, Jaden. I would like to know what you need to plan out from a financial standpoint when it comes to doing a cash flow deal. So Jaden's next deal is a cash flow deal.
Yep.
And I've sorted out the funding for the purchase of the property. However, I don't really know what I need to have ready for the building of the granny flat.
Okay.
Right? So how do you fund building a granny flat when you don't have the extra 150 to 200K cash or equity to throw at it? Right? That's on behalf of Jaden, Jessica, Seamus, Sam, Daniel, Jacob, and Isaac, and
who are all getting a cash flow deal in the next couple of
years.
years. I love
that's
it.
the whole fam and friends. So that's a good question.
Yeah, man, great question. So look, essentially the way a granny flat works and the granny flat process works, right, is let's say you buy a deal for $400,000, right? And then your granny flat on top, this is just use really easy numbers, is $200,000. There's a $600,000 total, let's call it like a package, right? You got your house and you got your granny. That package as a total is $600,000. it's not like you purchase, let's say you buy it at 80% LVR, just for, again, easier numbers, and you get the borrowing of 320 grand for the house, and then you need to come up with the, so you're putting 80 grand in plus closings, you might be in at 100, 110, and then you're putting in, another 150, 200 grand to build this granny, or in this scenario, 200,000. What they essentially would do is they'll go out there and value that total package price, or that total package deal. And that doesn't always come in bang on 600,000. Jimmy and I both know we've both had deals that have valued up 100 grand more. And we've both had deals that have, I don't know about Jimmy, but I've had deals that have valued up 100 grand short. And you can always challenge them and try and get them up. But this is typically, this typically can be a little bit of the battle sometimes around that. But a lot of the time they'll come in pretty well around purchase price plus build, right? And so in that scenario, you might, the extra $200,000 build that's going on, you essentially need the extra 20% in this scenario. If it all valued up correctly, you'll need the extra 20% deposit for the build, which would be another $40,000. So, in that scenario, you're getting, 20% deposit on the house, 20% deposit on the build, and funding the rest. Now, doing it in cash or equity is definitely a more of an advanced investor strategy. It's something that I do myself. I probably built about 3 or 4 homes, 2 or 3 builds, and then a granny or 2, I think, before I started building in cash. I prefer to build in cash or equity because the construction loan process can be a bit of a headache. But starting out, man, it's just part of the process. And yeah, man, you pretty much just top it up with a construction loan for the granny flat.
Okay. 2 separate loans.
Hope that answered it in total.
Yeah. And I found when I did that, I had 2 separate loans, one for the house, one for the granny. But then when I refinanced that deal together, I refinanced it as one loan to go again to when you did the next deal.
Yep. Perfect.
Anything else, Sammy? I think we've wrapped it up. Surely. I'm surprised 130 people have stuck around this long.
I know,
mate. We're going for an hour.
We didn't drop that many. I think we started at 150, and then about an hour and a few. I think a few people need to go bathe the kids, and I think Lukey went and gave himself a bit of a wash, bit of a haircut, and then I think we've only dropped about 20 in the whole thing. So thank you very much for everyone that stayed on and stayed amongst it all. Now, guys, I did promise at the back end of this, I would give some information essentially around the bonuses that are kind of coming for the back end of this as well. Now, anyone that missed, who was it at the very, very start? I think it might have been either Jaden or something who was it? Oh, no, it was Carl right at the very start that had missed the discount at the back end of the next year. Guys, I'm not one actually to ever do a birthday shout out, but it's actually my birthday tomorrow, and I'm doing I was going to do just the discount till tomorrow, but more just do a birthday week. So guys, the 20% discount is back on for any of you that aren't currently client of School of Property. Now remember, the 20% discount also goes in conjunction if you are an APS client. As of today, this is still in effect. If you're wanting to obviously sign up, you become a client, your next deal with APS is obviously you can get 50% of what you pay for the course. You get it back off, back off your next deal. So your next deal is a total fee. So essentially, guys, and I know so many people here, they sort of ask the question, is it worth doing, if I'm an APS client as well? And, the nuts and bolts of it, guys, is I still want you to build as much knowledge base as you can as you do this. So you're really understanding why we're doing it. And, I hope this is showing that, we're definitely wanting you guys, we're working with you guys and helping you build out the whole portfolio as well. So that's a great offer from that end. Now, as I posted on the stories this morning as well, guys, the other thing that I'm throwing out there as well is the ability, I'm throwing out the offer for 3 lucky people to be mentored by me over the next 12 months. Now, the way that to break that down and how that's actually going to look as well, guys, is essentially it's going to be a strategy session once a quarter, which normally, guys, I don't do this for anyone. Someone could throw 10 grand at me and I say no to doing strategy sessions for people that aren't part of APS. I just don't do it. But essentially, you had to register for this event. We've still got 130 odd people on here right now. Register for the event, attend it to the very end, and then be a School of Property attendee as well. So you still got to be a School of Property bloody student, guys. If all those 3 things marry up, send in the bloody request to do this thing. We'll do 4 sessions over the next year. What I really want to help you guys do, I want to take 3 people that are super committed, that want to take their portfolios to the next height. If you want to jump on board with us, within this, I can guarantee you we'll shoot your property to the next level within the moon as well. So we're going to pick 3 people out. We're going to run this thing, the 20% discount. We're going to run this thing till Friday night. We're going to announce who those people are that have won the 3 mentoring positions. We're going to announce those on Saturday morning. And yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. If you guys are super committed to your goals, you know, look at Jimmy, someone that he and I became we came very, very close working together, and we strategized on his portfolio very, very regularly when we went through the early part of his journey as well. That's essentially what you guys are going to get. You guys are going to get, you know, 3 lucky people are going to get me to hand mold their portfolios and build these things the whole way out. So anyone that's keen on that, make sure if you hit those 3 things, take a screenshot of us talking right now to prove that you were on at the very back end of that. If you don't know how to take a screenshot, get your phone out, just take a photo of the thing, prove that you're on this thing, send it in. I know there's a few people, I don't know if you select Jimmy, a few people saying, please pick me for the mentoring thing before as well. So make sure you get that thing in, guys, as well. Jimmy, anything to sign off, mate? I'm pretty good, man. I hope everyone enjoyed the rapid fire session.
Just the 20% discount. Is there a code that they need to use?
Oh, yeah, that'll probably be a good one. So guys, it's Sammy, all in capitals. So SAMMY 20. That code is open until midnight on Friday night, guys.
Okay, Sammy 20.
What on for coming up?
Sammy 20.
That's the one.
There you go.
Mate,
how old are you turning?
I just gave my age away. That's how old I'm turning.
Here we go. Not how old you act. How old are you?
I act 15. Now I'm turning. What am I turning? I'm turning 34, mate. 34. Apologies for the sirens, guys. I think the cops are coming to get Jimmy. They realized. Can you hear that, Jimmy?
Well, on behalf of everyone on the webinar, Sammy, and everyone in the community, the first to say a big happy birthday to you, mate. You know, I know that you're a very busy guy and you don't take a lot of time out for yourself, but I do hope that tomorrow you can chill out a little bit, enjoy the spoils of all your hard work and celebrate, because if you're not celebrating the wins and you're not celebrating the special moments, then literally what the hell are you doing? It doesn't make all the shit times worthwhile. So, mate, enjoy the spoils. You've made a massive difference to a lot of people's lives in this community, and obviously, you know, all these people listening. So we all hope you have an incredible birthday, mate.
Jimmy boy, thank you very much, buddy. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. For everyone's questions that we didn't get to, we're going to bank these things up. Jimmy's coming up next week. Actually, we're going to do a big recording. We'll bang out the rest of the questions over the next couple of months Q&As. Thank you guys very much for sending it all in. I really appreciate having you all on. Honestly, we all love having you in this community, both the Scouting Australia podcast and the APS and the School of Property team and all. It's all a big circle of love. We're really trying to. I really want to help as many of you guys as possible get to this these big retirement goals that everyone's chasing as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed it. And yeah, guys, until next time, we'll see you all soon.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy.